y'all, and welcome to Real Talk with Dr. LaWanda Hill. I am the host, yours truly, Dr. LaWanda, and I'm a licensed psychologist, a consultant, and curator of spaces. I am super excited to introduce you all to this show that I am dedicating to Black women, our unique stories, our unique journeys as we are pursuing becoming a higher version of ourselves and pursuing joy, pleasure, liberation, passion, and all things that are great and fulfilling in life. I created this show, y'all, because I recognize that Black women have such a very unique experience that's based on history, that's based on our culture, that's based on our upbringing. They really color and shape our journeys as we're pursuing becoming higher versions of ourselves, as we're trying to evolve and pursue all that we want out of life. As a licensed psychologist, I found in my work that when Black women are trying to pursue health and well-being or trying to become better versions of themselves, the resources and the representation sometimes often feel scarce. And because of one or two reasons, either because there's this stereotypical depiction of who Black women are, who they are, stereotypical depiction of who Black women are, that perpetuate these negative stereotypes, or there's this other version of women that do not center Black women or take into account our unique journeys and our complexities, that reinforce unrealistic, very sanitized versions of womanhood and the pursuit of well-being. And so what I created was Real Talk with Dr. LaWanda Hill, because I wanted us to have a space where we can have real, candid conversations about our journeys of becoming better versions of ourselves and all of the things that may impact that. One of the key terms that is very important to me is Sankofa. And Sankofa comes from West Africa, and it is a term that means to go back and get it. And so when we think about what that means for me, I often feel like when we are trying to pursue becoming a higher version of ourselves as Black women, we have to always go back. We have to always go back and figure out where we come from, what are our journeys, what are some of the unique narratives that shape where we are today, that influence how we go forward. And not enough of representation is out there about that in a very real and authentic way that we can resonate with. And so that's what this show is all about. It's about being real. It's about being relatable. It's about being relevant. And it's about centering our stories. So I'm excited to have you. I hope that you'll do two things, that you'll go ahead and hit that subscribe button to subscribe to this channel so you can be in the know of when the new episodes drop. I am the host, but I'm going to have some amazing co-hosts, y'all, that can really speak to the complexities, the beautiful complexities of Black women. And I want you to be in the know of when those come out, as we touch on the topics that you may be looking for insight or validation or even support and tips in for that particular area of your life. And I also want you to share it with a friend. I want you to share it with a girlfriend. I believe that we are relational beings, and in the context of relationships, if they are healthy and the right components are there, or the right dynamics are at place, we thrive. And to have somebody else who's on the journey with you to become a higher version of yourself, who's growing with you as you're growing, is invaluable. Now that I've introduced you to the show, let's go ahead and hop into our very first topic, which is Black women and our relationships with our bodies. I feel like this is such a necessary topic to start off this show with, so much so that I've created a series about it where we're going to talk about different aspects of Black women and their relationships with our bodies. When you think about it, y'all, our relationships with our bodies are so essential. They're so critical. Our relationships with our bodies is the pathway to so much. It is the pathway to energy intake, which we know is food that sustains our body, that brings pleasure to our body, that gives us an opportunity to connect with different cuisines. It's life sustaining. Our relationship with our body also brings us, it's the pathway to connection with other people, whether that be through physical touch, whether that be through a caring touch, or concerned touch, or an exciting touch. It also can be the pathway to sexual intimacy, where we are able to be conduits of pleasure for other people and ourselves experience pleasure. It's a pathway of being empowered in our bodies as we know what we want and we know what we like, and we begin to be intentional about pursuing that. Our relationships with our body is so critical, it's so essential, but I recognize as Black women, One of the things that is unfortunate is that we haven't really been taught and socialized around the idea of having an intentional, active relationship with our bodies. It's always been kind of passive and lacking some level of agency. And that comes from a number of different sources that we're going to tap into. So here to talk with me on my very first episode of Black women and their relationships with their bodies is Dr. Ebony, who is a licensed psychologist and food and relationship strategist. And Dr. Ebony is going to sit down and talk about why our relationship with our bodies is so important and give us some historical context about Black women and that relationship with food impacts our relationship with our body and disempower us. Because the whole purpose of this show is to center Black women and empower us to be the highest versions of ourselves. And so I'm super excited to be able to bring in some amazing co-hosts who's going to help us on that journey. So we're going to start off first with Dr. Ebony, who is a licensed psychologist and food and relationship strategist. I'm really happy to have you, Dr. Ebony.
And I'm happy to be here, Dr. Wanda. So thank you so much.
I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you your thoughts about why this is so important, you know, understanding and cultivating a relationship with our body.
So I think that to understand us in our relationship with our body, we've got to understand the harm that's been done to it. I think we've got to think about it in terms of all throughout history, the ways in which our bodies have seemingly belonged to other people, especially men, and how men have made the laws, they have made the rules, they have made all of the things, like think about the medical industry. They made all of the decisions about our bodies without us. And I have to credit things like the Me Too movement, anti-diet culture, which we can get into that too, because that's been whitewashed. But really talking about ways that we're gaining control and power back of our bodies, because through history it's been taken from us. We think back to the times where we just kind of like slavery in the ways that we were made to work and told that our bodies were not good enough, put on display, ridiculed for the shape of our bodies, ridiculed for the features that we have, and made fun of. And now that we even see it now in current culture, current like society, people want the features that we were made fun of about. So now we're saying through empowerment, through healing, through doing our work, through therapy, through visibility of a lot of people speaking out, we're saying, wait a second, my body belongs to me and I'm gonna do what I want to it and I'm actually gonna take it back. And I think that has come from us also breaking generational curses of feeling like we can't say what we want to say about our bodies. We can't wear what we want to wear. We can't display it like we want to. And respectability politics, right? So all of that stuff we have to take into account. And so when we think about all those things taken together and think about the relationship with our body, all of those things color how we see ourselves. They color how we experience our bodies. And then the uprising of people and Black women, especially beginning to talk about intimacy and sex and pleasure, and us recognizing that we have a very active role in all of that, makes us want to get more in touch with our bodies. Us realizing that there's actually a relationship with food. I'm not just eating to be eating. There's some systemic things going on, and that has impacted my relationship with food. Let's talk about that. And that makes me want to take a deeper look at myself. Mindfulness, wanting to slow down, wanting to understand. All of this has been done, I think, through language, through healing, and us talking about it more. So now we're kind of understanding, okay, there's something to this. Let me dive in deeper. And so I'm hoping we can unpack kind of what that looks like for some people.
Yeah. That's so good. First of all, you already done dropped so many gems. Like if we declared the benediction right now, because what I'm hearing is like, the relationship with our body, specifically as Black women, has been colored by so much, like so many systems, so many visible forces, invisible forces, you know, systemic oppression, intergenerational trauma that our body still holds and keep the score of. So not only is it colored by this, the thing that really stood out to me the most as you was talking about relationships, intimacy, sex, food, is that our body is such it's the pathway to so much. It's the pathway to, you know, sustaining our life and well-being. It's the pathway to connecting with other people. It's the pathway to pleasure. You know, it's the pathway to intimacy. So this thing, no wonder people have tried to have so much power over it, specifically, you know, Black folks. This body of ours is the pathway for so much, but yet our relationship with it is colored by so many different systems. All of this is something that you share with your clients and even the people that you coach. But where do we even start? Like, what system do we even begin to grapple with in understanding our relationships with our body. Because we could be talking all day.
It's so many things, right? So I think that even in your work, you can take it from an intimacy lens. I think you can take it from a pleasure lens. I think you can take it from a racial and sort of equity and inclusion lens, right? So I choose to take the relationship with the body from the food lens, right? The food, the weight, that lens, trauma lens, right? Because I know that the body does hold so much, and there are so many sort of avenues by which we can have a relationship with our body. So I come from that aspect. But as you were talking, I was thinking about a passive relationship versus an active relationship. And I think now where we are now, what makes it such a topic of conversation is the active role we're taking now in having a relationship with our body and food. In the past, historically, it's been a very passive one, right? Because we didn't feel like we had a right to our bodies. We didn't feel like we were heard. Even if I look at the women in my family, there's things that have happened to them that I'm learning about that they just kind of like swept under the rug and kind of thought about it as something that just happens to them. So if this is something that just happens to you, right, then how much of an active role do you have? How do you show up with that thing? And if that's the thing that you feel like was the gateway, right, the sort of modality by which you were harmed, almost seems like you want to distance yourself from it.
That's good.
So our relationship kind of has been colored by that as well. Like, I don't want to have an intimate relationship with something that I'm one. Okay, so we also got to talk about religion too. I just thought of it. Right. So one that I've been told is a temple and I shouldn't do anything to. How do I have an intimate relationship to something I even feel so distant from? Only now do we have permission to question some of those things. They didn't have that back then. So they don't question. So they took a very passive role. And I find that now we're taking a very active role and saying, well, wait a second, like I said before, I do get to feel this. I do get to experience this. This is my body. I do get to have a relationship with it. I do get to touch on it because, a lot of times we were told that we shouldn't do that.
Right.
So if I know now that I have permission to do these things, then I may take a little bit more active interest in what I feed it, how I shape it, what I do with it, that kind of thing. So I think all of that now is coming to surface and we're seeing our bodies in a very different light.
Right. That's good. That's rich. And I like that angle. And I'm going to be talking more about our relationship with our bodies with intimacy and pleasure in later episodes. And we're going to be focused specifically on food and what we put in it and maybe even body image. But I think that there's so many lenses so many angles we can take it in. Like all of it is important. We're now having to have more of an active relationship as opposed to a passive one. Like, I'm curious, like, what do you feel like that click is for people that help them move? Because I would imagine a lot of people, some may have inherited these passive roles, like people have had trauma, we even got into diet culture. So what do you think the shift is for people that move them? Or what is your approach to help move people from that passive, knowing all the messages they've internalized, to a more active role in their relationship with their body?
Yeah, it's really education. It's really education that I'm hoping eventually leads to healing. I'm hoping that it's a lot of unlearning. So a large part of my work, I take them through kind of I take them through this, what I've developed as a framework, right? We go through this path of understanding and healing. And the first one is acknowledging and accepting that there are some things that we've been told that's absolutely not true as it relates to food, as it relates to our bodies, right? So a lot of it is built around unlearning some of that stuff, because to learn something new means that we have to call some other stuff out. That's not true. So we focus on that, we learn, we acknowledge, we accept, and then we move towards kind of reworking some things in our minds, and then we rework some things in our behaviors. Then we understand how to show up with that when it presents itself in life. So we kind of go through this phase of kind of reconstructing the way that we think about food, the way that we think about our bodies. And I think that creates a more active role. So I like to kind of focus on mindset, habits, and triggers. And if anybody who's ever come across my work know that I focus on those 3 areas. And through the work of building a new relationship with food, we also tackle those things. And within each of those 3 categories, there are subcategories of acknowledgement and acceptance, moving towards accountability, and unlearning and committing to kind of continuing to learn. And so by going through these steps, we begin to take a more active role, because now we are saying, okay, that wasn't true what my mom and them told me. Yeah. Now I know something else to be true. how else do I show up with myself? How then do I change my behaviors? Which, in order to change your behaviors, you got to take an active role anyway. You can't change your behaviors in a very passive way. So I'm asking them to do things. I'm asking them to try. So for instance, one of the exercises when we're working through a relationship with food is what is the message? And you probably know this, Dr. LaWanda. What is the message that you received growing up about leaving food on your plate? People are going to starve, right? So we do an active exercise where you intentionally leave food on your plate and that discomfort.
Yeah.
That discomfort, right? So because we're reteaching ourselves that the things that I learned aren't necessarily true, but every time I do what I was taught, I'm reinforcing it as if it was true, and it's not. So if I eat all my food, right, I'm reinforcing grandma and mama's notion that the kids are going to starve, and it's not true.
And that keeps leading me to this poor or unhealthy relationship with that food, which perpetuates this cycle, right?
Yeah.
I like that because it's like breaking the pattern. It's like if you continue to do it, it's like a script. I tell people all the time, there's this story that we're always saying to ourselves, operating from, and sometimes it's not true. So if your script, if your narrative is, I got to eat all my food or something going to happen, but it's not true, but you keep doing it, it's going to keep this negative cycle with food, with your body. So I guess I'm wondering, are you saying that our relationship with food is correlated with our relationship with our bodies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can't tackle the relationship with our bodies without talking about the food. We can't because in my mind, I don't think we can, because food is the very thing, especially as we talk about Black women, food is the very thing that we've been told destroys, kills us, and makes us unhealthy, right? So if you eat your soul food, you're going to be obese. How can we not talk about the body? How can we not talk about body image? How can we not talk about how I see myself if you're telling me that if I eat that my people, if I eat the food that is central to my people, I'm gonna die?
Yeah. And that's so cultural. That's so cultural too, because I was watching High on the Hog, and I don't know if you saw it. I gotta check that on Netflix. And I don't know, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this, but it was this part where, these messages that we've heard about our relationship with food and our relationship with our body is just deep, if y'all haven't been able to see. And one of the things that he said was, it was talking about the hog, and he was talking about the pig feed, all these other parts of the pig that, the master didn't want. So Black people have been taught to make use of it. But he challenged that narrative, and he was like, I don't know if it was him or the woman, but she's like, we've been using all parts of the animal. We've always appreciated every part of the animal from our continent, in different parts of West Africa, South Africa. So we knew how, they just didn't know how to cook it. They didn't know how to engage that part of the animal. So it's like, oh, we don't want that. We don't want that. We'll throw it away. And so I remember how this story became like, oh, we don't take the scraps because that's what, the master, the white people didn't want. But then that new narrative, like, actually, and he did say, now we don't eat this every day.
Right.
This is in moderation. This is something that we do. And so just those messages around food that's related to our culture. Specifically, I hear the connection. It's like you can't talk about your relationship with your body without including food, because now, number one, is the only essential. We need it, but there's also a cultural component to it that is so much a part of who we are. So it sounds so nuanced, like it's so nuanced and so interconnected.
But they have simplified it and boiled it all down to just, we're gonna die. Right? which is a complete lie, which also engages us in scarcity mindset, which also helps us, like, reinforces fear. And from a psychological perspective, what we do when we are living in a state of fear. What we do when we are living in a state of scarcity, right? We want more and more and more what they say we couldn't have. You bring up a really good point around when those parts of the animals were used. They weren't used every day. We didn't eat them every day. They were used for feasting. Bonding, right? They were used for times of gathering and to show appreciation and to show love and to that kind of thing. So if you notice in how when they all met together, they had an array of things. They were feasting. There was a festival, right? But take the colonized way of looking at it. We don't eat like that every day, but they've sold us a lie because we don't know where we come from. They told us a lie that that's how we eat every day, and that's not true. True. Now, coming from the South, there were Sundays where we ate like that, but even mama didn't cook like that every day.
You're right. It's kind of been, the narrative has been picked up and flipped and become when you can't eat that at all because of course you're
Right.
going to die. And then people who are already, struggling with their relationships with their body, or which think this is a good pivot into diet culture and these standards of beauty and these images, now begin to associate these messages and these ways of thinking with, oh, I can't have that, and I can't have that, and I can't have that.
But it's scarcity mindset, right? So you want to blame us for it. So there are some parts of the world where people do cook that way every single day. But we can't say it's because that's just the way that they want to eat without saying, well, what about the food deserts? Are you making food available to people, or do they not have a choice but to cook like this every day so that they feed their families, so that the large number of people in the home can eat and that they'll stay full? So the narrative has been one where we don't know how to stop. We have insatiable appetites. We eat the scraps. We eat bad food. We're going to die. But the point in the work that I do around rebuilding a relationship with food is calling the systems out. No, our relationship with food has been colored by lies, food deserts, food apartheid, all of these other things. The medical industry using an outdated system, an antiquated system to measure how healthy we are. So you impart scarcity mindset onto people and want them to live abundantly. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And so then we begin to say, well, if I can't have it, and we all know what's on the other end of scarcity, it's overconsumption, overcompensating. So now I've eaten to the point where now my body becomes an issue. And then we all go to the doctor and are told again by the BMI, you're unhealthy. So that's why I think they both tie in together, because then the way that we eat is going to show up in the medical office. At least they're going to try to connect it that way. And then it's going to show up in all the other areas of our lives. And then now social media, popular culture, diet culture, showing all of these body shapes and sizes and saying that this is the way you should eat. You shouldn't eat that. So all of this is continuing to reinforce scarcity mindset, thus leaving us confused about how to take care of our own bodies when we have the skill. So a large part of rebuilding a relationship is empowering us to get back to the place where we have the skill to take care of our own bodies and do what we feel is necessary for our own bodies, regardless of how that looks, because all of our bodies are shaped differently.
We're going to pause right there, y'all, and we will be back next week with part 2 of this episode with Dr. Ebony. Be sure to subscribe so that you can be in the know and stay connected to Real Talk with Dr. LaWanda Hill.